Welcome to Smart Listening Lab, a channel for learning English through podcasts, The Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a deep dive into something truly remarkable, the profound connection between your brain and learning English. Our source material for this deep dive is an excerpt discussing a topic fascinatingly titled Rewire Your Brain English Podcast for Learning English.
That's exactly right. And our mission today, based on this source, is to move beyond just saying practice makes perfect in language learning. We want to show you why practice works at a biological level. The core concept we'll unpack is neuroplasticity, your brain's incredible ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This deep dive reveals that learning English isn't just a mental exercise, it's a physical process of, sculpting your brain's architecture.
Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds almost like science fiction. The idea that simply engaging with English, listening, speaking, reading, writing, literally builds new brain connections. How does that actually work? Are we talking about like growing new brain cells?
Not typically growing entirely new neurons once you're an adult, no. But definitely forming new connections between existing ones and strengthening those connections. Think of your brain initially like a vast, unmapped territory, maybe with some main roads for your native language. As you start using English, you're exploring this territory, sort of bushwhacking new paths. Consistent practice is like paving those paths, making them clearer, wider, and, faster to travel. The source points out that research shows tangible structural changes happen in the brain when you learn a new language.
Structural changes? What kind of structure are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about things like increased gray matter density. Gray matter is where the bulk of neuron cell bodies are, involved in processing information. Increased density is seen in areas linked to crucial cognitive functions, like intelligence, attention, and memory.
Ah, okay.
So learning English isn't just about English. It's giving a workout to the parts of your brain responsible for paying attention and remembering things in general.
Wow, so it's literally sort of thickening the processing centers.
In a sense, yes, making them more complex and efficient. The source also mentions improved white matter integrity.
White matter, that's the connections.
Exactly. White matter is like the wiring. It connects different areas of gray matter, allowing them to communicate quickly. Better integrity means those communication lines are stronger and faster, enhancing something called cognitive flexibility.
Cognitive flexibility.
Yeah, it allows your brain to switch between tasks or ideas more easily.
So learning English is building both the processing power and the highways connecting those processing centers. Is that fair to say?
That's a great way to put it, exactly. And this isn't just about reaching, high-level fluency. Even at early stages, consistent engagement starts building these networks. It's about constructing the specific neural architecture needed for understanding, producing, and retrieving English efficiently. It's a physical foundation for proficiency.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Given that physical process is happening, how do resources like podcasts specifically leverage this brain power for learning English? I mean, they're just audio files, right? What makes them such potent tools, according to the source?
They might seem like just audio, but they tap into these neuroplastic principles in incredibly effective ways. The source details several mechanisms. First, podcasts demand active listening. Unlike just passively hearing background noise, you have to actively decode the sounds, follow the rhythm and intonation, grasp the meaning, understand the context. This active decoding process is crucial because it forces your brain to work those specific pathways associated with English sounds and structures. It's this cognitive effort that stimulates the growth and strengthening we just talked about. Your brain isn't just receiving data, it's actively processing and building based on it.
Okay, so the effort involved in understanding is key. What else do podcasts bring to the table?
Well, they naturally facilitate repetition and spaced repetition, which is really a cornerstone of memory consolidation and neural strengthening. When you listen to an episode, then perhaps re-listen later, or hear recurring vocabulary phrases or grammatical structures in different episodes, while you're reactivating those same neural pathways, neuroscience has this core principle: neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh, I've heard that.
Exactly. So the more frequently you activate the pathway for a specific English word, pronunciation, or grammatical construction, the stronger and more robust that connection becomes. Podcasts offer this repetition pretty organically.
So every time I re-listen or just hear a familiar word, I'm essentially strengthening those brain connections, making them faster, building those superhighways we talked about earlier.
Precisely. You're reinforcing the route, making it more automatic. Another powerful mechanism the source talks about is contextual learning. Podcasts present language in natural, authentic settings: conversations, stories, news reports, lectures. You're hearing words and phrases embedded in real-life scenarios with accompanying tone, situation, maybe even sound effects sometimes.
Mm.
This richness provides multiple hooks for your brain to attach meaning to. Learning hello from a dictionary is one thing, but hearing it used in a friendly greeting conversation in a podcast creates a far richer, more meaningful neural network around that word than, say, an isolated flashcard ever could.
Right, the context makes it stick better.
It really does. It makes retrieval easier later on, too, because the brain has more threads to pull on, like you said.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
The source also brings up the shadowing technique. Some language learning podcasts specifically encourage this. Yeah, you listen to a short segment, pause, and then immediately repeat it aloud, trying to mimic the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, rhythm as closely as you can. This technique is fascinating from a neuro perspective because it engages not only your auditory processing areas, the listening part, but also your motor speech areas, the speaking part.
Ah, okay.
You're physically practicing the movements required for English sounds while simultaneously hearing the target sound. This dual engagement significantly enhances the neural connections involved in accurate pronunciation and developing, fluent speech patterns.
So I'm training my ear and my mouth at the exact same time, creating stronger links between what I hear and how I physically make the sound.
That's the idea, yeah. It's a very direct link between perception and production at a neural level.
Cool.
Additionally, podcasts provide a fantastic variety of inputs. Different hosts, different accents, different speaking speeds, different topics. This constant exposure to linguistic diversity trains your brain to be more adaptable and flexible in processing spoken English. Your auditory system gets better at distinguishing sounds across all these variations.
Which is crucial for understanding different people in the real world.
Absolutely. And finally, the source emphasizes their practical side, right? Accessibility and consistency.
Yeah, that seems huge.
It really is. You can download podcasts, listen during commutes, while exercising, doing chores, whenever you have a few spare minutes. This accessibility enables consistency, and consistency is arguably the most critical factor for driving neuroplastic change. Frequent, even short bursts of practice are far more effective for building and strengthening neural networks than cramming for hours once a week.
Right.
Podcasts make that regular, manageable exposure incredibly easy to weave into your daily routine. This consistent firing of those neural pathways is what really solidifies the changes.
Okay, so moving beyond the mechanisms, what specific physical changes are actually happening deep inside the brain as we consistently use English, particularly through methods like listening to podcasts? The source digs into some specifics here.
It does, and this is where the whole rewiring thing gets very literal. One process is synaptic pruning and strengthening. Imagine your brain's connections for language like a busy garden. When you use English pathways, frequently hearing a word, retrieving it, using a grammar rule, the synaptic connections along those pathways get strengthened. They become more efficient at transmitting signals.
Okay.
Simultaneously, connections that are not used frequently, maybe those associated with your native language when you're focused on English or incorrect English patterns you used to make, they can be weakened or even pruned away. Your brain is constantly optimizing itself, becoming more efficient for English use.
So it's like the brain is weeding out the unused paths and really reinforcing the ones needed for English, making it more streamlined.
Exactly, becoming more streamlined. Another really significant change mentioned is myelination.
Myelination sounds technical.
It is a bit, but think of it like insulation. Nerve fibers are wrapped in a fatty substance called myelin, like the plastic coating around an electrical wire. Myelin allows nerve signals to travel much faster and more efficiently. When you repeatedly use specific pathways for English, maybe recognizing a common phrase super quickly or recalling a response instantly, the myelin sheath around those nerve fibers can actually increase.
Wow, okay, so more insulation means faster signals.
Precisely. This increased myelination leads to faster signal transmission along those specific English pathways.
Faster signal transmission. What does that actually feel like to me, the listener?
Well, it feels like quicker comprehension when you're listening. Your brain processes the sounds and meaning with less delay, less effort. It also contributes to more fluent speaking because the signals from your thought process reach your speech muscles faster. You're literally speeding up your brain's ability to process and produce English.
That's amazing. And we touched on gray matter density earlier.
Yes. The source comes back to the expansion of gray matter. Consistent engagement with English stimulates growth and increased density in crucial brain regions. These include areas involved in language processing, like understanding grammar and vocabulary memory formation, for remembering new words and phrases, and attention for staying focused while listening or speaking. These areas are essentially becoming more complex and capable as you learn.
And the wiring between those areas, the white matter.
That's the improved white matter integrity again. Research, especially looking at bilingual individuals, shows better connectivity and communication between different brain regions. This enhanced communication network supports that cognitive flexibility we mentioned, allowing you to switch between languages more easily. But perhaps more importantly, it seems to improve your ability to switch between tasks or perspectives in general, even outside of language use.
So learning English could give you a more connected, flexible brain overall, not just for language.
The evidence from the source certainly points strongly in that direction. It also leads to enhanced auditory processing.
Right. Training the ear.
Exactly. Regular exposure to spoken English, particularly through listening, trains your auditory cortex, the part of your brain that processes sound. It just gets better at distinguishing the subtle differences between English phones, the basic sounds. It gets better at recognizing intonation patterns that convey meaning or emotion and grasping the natural rhythm of spoken English. You literally develop a more finely tuned ear for the language.
I've definitely felt that, initially struggling to even pick out words, but over time, you start hearing the flow much better. That's the auditory cortex getting trained.
Precisely. It's your brain adapting based on the input it receives. And finally, and this is a huge benefit the source highlights, learning a language is strongly linked to increased cognitive control and executive function.
Executive function. That
Right.
sounds important.
It really is. These are high-level brain skills like attention, working memory, and inhibition, the ability to suppress irrelevant information. Learning English requires you to manage two language systems, right? You have to suppress the interference of your native language, hold new English information in your working memory while you process it, and switch your attention between listening and thinking or speaking. This constant mental juggling act strengthens these executive functions.
So it's kind of like training your brain's air traffic control system, keeping everything organized and focused.
That's a great analogy. It makes you better at managing mental tasks, focusing despite distractions, and holding relevant information in mind. These are general cognitive improvements that can benefit you in many areas of life, not just your English skills.
That's a really powerful range of physical changes and cognitive benefits. Now, the source doesn't just give us the science, it also provides some illustrative example, sort of real-world success stories of how this rewiring translates. Which of those examples stood out to you as best illustrating these points?
Yeah, these stories really bring the science to life, don't they? There's the example of Maria, who the source calls the accidental immersion learner. She lived in an English-speaking country but didn't really study formally. Her main exposure was just listening to news podcasts during her commute. After about 6 months, she noticed a significant improvement in her ability to understand fast native speech, and she found herself using new vocabulary spontaneously without thinking about it.
Wow.
Her consistent, sort of low-pressure listening environment, just facilitated by the podcasts, strengthened her auditory processing pathways and probably increased myelination in those comprehension networks. It made her processing faster and more efficient. She wasn't forcing it, but the consistent exposure just did the rewiring.
So her brain just naturally got better at keeping up with real English speeds simply because of that regular input. No intense studying needed.
Exactly. Her brain just adapted to the consistent input it was getting. Then there's Kenji, the pronunciation breakthrough artist. He apparently struggled with specific English sounds, phonemes, that didn't exist in his native language. He used a podcast that specifically incorporated that shadowing technique we talked about.
Right, the mimicking one.
Yeah. By mimicking the sounds aloud, he was actively engaging his motor speech cortex while hearing the target pronunciation. This simultaneous practice, guided by the auditory input, helped preen away the incorrect motor patterns and strengthen the precise neural connections needed for those tricky sounds. His tongue and mouth were literally being retrained via the brain connections formed by that shadowing practice.
That direct physical practice linked to listening really made the difference in his ability to actually produce the sounds correctly.
It really highlights the power of engaging multiple brain areas simultaneously. Another example is Fatima, the confident conversationalist. Her story was that she knew English grammar and vocabulary pretty well from school, but really lacked confidence when it came to actually speaking. She used engaging narrative podcasts and actively practiced pausing the episodes to summarize what she'd heard or even articulate her own thoughts on the topic aloud.
So active recall practice.
Exactly. Over a year, she felt her ability to retrieve words and form sentences became much faster, which led to smoother speech flow and, naturally, increased confidence. This practice likely increased gray matter density in her language production areas and improved myelination, speeding up her mental dictionary access and the pathway from thought to spoken word.
Her consistent effort to activate those production pathways made retrieval faster and speaking feel easier. That makes a lot of sense.
Precisely. It shows how active use really builds fluency. And finally, there was David, the cognitive boost professional. He learned French via podcasts purely as a hobby, not for work or anything. But after several months, he noticed an unexpected benefit: improved focus and concentration when dealing with complex tasks at his job.
Oh, interesting. Not even related to the French itself.
Right. This isn't about his French proficiency, but it's a clear illustration of how the general brain workout of managing a new language, even through informal means like podcasts, enhanced his executive functions, probably through improved white matter integrity and better communication between different cognitive areas, like we discussed.
So these stories really underscore that the impact isn't just limited to language skills, but can actually spill over into broader cognitive enhancements.
That's a really significant takeaway from the source's examples and the research it references, yeah. They demonstrate the practical application of all this neuroplasticity talk. The source highlights that the benefit isn't solely achieving language proficiency, although obviously that's the main goal for most people. It's also about fundamentally enhancing your cognitive abilities, making the learning process itself deeply enriching and potentially beneficial for your brain's overall health and function.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean? This deep dive into the source really shows us that learning English, particularly when you engage with it through accessible and diverse methods like listening to podcasts, is far more than just memorizing lists or studying grammar rules. It's an active process of changing the physical structure and the actual function of your brain.
You are quite literally rewiring your brain's hardware. It's not just a metaphor. You're building and strengthening neural pathways for faster comprehension, you're improving the efficiency of your communication lines for more fluent production, and you're even enhancing your general cognitive control. The source makes it abundantly clear. Consistency in practice and using diverse inputs like those naturally found in the rich world of podcasts, these are the key drivers for building and solidifying these crucial neural networks effectively.
It's incredible. So as you listen to English, perhaps even listening to us right now, you are participating in this amazing physical biological process of neuroplasticity. You're not just filling your brain with information, you are actively shaping its very architecture, building the physical foundations for your language skills, and significantly boosting your broader cognitive strength.
Absolutely. And this consistent brain workout has implications that reach far beyond just your current English level. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source touches on the potential for language learning and this kind of consistent cognitive engagement to play a role in maintaining cognitive vitality later in life, maybe even potentially delaying age-related cognitive decline. And that raises a really important and exciting question, doesn't it? Considering the incredible adaptability the source describes, what other lasting, perhaps even unexpected benefits might this ongoing engagement with English unlock for your brain in the years to come?
Thanks for tuning in. Keep practicing, and for more English lessons, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.